Hello and welcome back to Half as Interesting. Today we're talking about, you guessed it, the surprising health benefits of standing in the middle of the highway at night wearing all black.
Oh, looks like someone finally ran out of topics. You were supposed to be here years ago.
What's going on? Am I dead? Why do you sound like me?
That file is not looking good. Whew. This is the annoying part. Look, Half as Interesting, if you want to get past those gates, you've got to confess your sins. And you, my friend, have committed a lot of sins.
No, I haven't. I only stole that one TV. Well, two TVs, but it was at the same time.
No, not stealing, killing, adultery, all that stuff. God doesn't care about any of that anymore. He's gotten really into transit Twitter lately, so the only sins that exist are making small factual errors in educational YouTube videos now.
Uh-oh.
Yep, so cough it up. What mistakes did you make this year?
Well, let's see. In our video about the river that flows into both the Atlantic and Pacific, I mentioned this lake in Canada, the Committee's Punch Bowl, as an example of a lake that straddles the Continental Divide, and I cracked a little joke about how if you spiked it, you would be spiking both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, which would make the US Fish and Wildlife Service very upset. And while that joke was funny and epic, it was not accurate. Sitting on the Continental Divide, the Committee's Punch Bowl does drain into two different oceans, but it doesn't drain into the Atlantic. It drains into the Pacific and the Arctic. And just for what it's worth, the US Fish and Wildlife Service wouldn't be able to stop you from spiking it because this lake is in Canada, and Canada is under the jurisdiction of, for some reason, Canada. In our video about why Hyundais and Kias keep getting stolen, we explained how to hotwire a car. Wait, really? We taught our audience how to hotwire a real car? Okay, whatever. It turns out we did that kind of wrong. We said that you should put electrical tape on the exposed ignition wires because otherwise you'd be electrocuted, which isn't true. In most cars, those wires are only carrying 12 volts and can't really electrocute you. At most, they could give you a tiny little shock. The purpose of the tape is actually to stop you from accidentally shorting the circuit and blowing a fuse or shutting off the car itself. So really nothing to worry about. Go crazy. I was publicly accused by several different people of being a CIA plant for saying that Amtrak absorbed the Pennsylvania Railroad in 1976. What technically happened was that the Pennsylvania Railroad merged with New York Central and became Penn Central, went bankrupt, handed over their lines to Conrail, and Amtrak ended up with their section of Northeast Corridor. But now the CIA is going to kill me, so I hope you're happy. In our video about the United States' 42 concurrent national emergencies, I pointed out that Alexander Lukashenko had his own national emergency barring him from entering the country. But this is the wrong executive order. These are just a pretty generic set of sanctions on Syria for doing terrorism stuff. The one I was actually talking about was issued 2 years later, Executive Order 13405, which basically said, among other things, that Lukashenko can't go to Disneyland because he destroyed Belarusian democracy. My writer Amy tried to flex her 75% of a stats degree in our video about string pin bowling by pulling these stats out of a research paper for the 1% of our audience who might care about them, and that 1% of our audience told us that those numbers were impossible. So I asked my writer Ben to go back through the paper and figure out what was wrong, but he got scared and started crying, so I went back through the paper and sure enough, this is the wrong p-value. The actual p-value is like 0.92. Cool. In our video about the 128 airlines banned in the EU, we committed some light map crimes. This map near the end of the video is at least 12 years outdated because it shows the EU as including the UK, but not Croatia, which joined in July of 2013. A better map of the EU can be seen here, earlier in the video, but this map is wrong for a more complicated reason. At this point in the video, we're talking about countries affected by the EU Air Safety List, but this list is published by the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, and they actually have jurisdiction in a few countries outside the EU, specifically with the EU's four best friends, Iceland, Norway, Liechtenstein, and Switzerland. We committed yet another map crime in our video about the security of the Paris Olympics when we compared the Paris no-fly zone to the no-fly zone over Walt Disney World in Florida. Except this isn't that at all. We actually couldn't figure out what this was, and it took my writer Ben like 2 hours of poring over aeronautical charts to figure out what we had even shown you, which it turns out is a combination of a bunch of 3 different military operating areas around Lake Placid. But whatever it is, it's not the Disney no-fly zone, which is all the way up here and much, much smaller. In our video about the failure of RCA's Select Division, I did a bad job of explaining how vinyl works. I implied that monotrack vinyl records are cut vertically in an up-down wave, and while this has been done, it's much less common than mono records being cut laterally in a side-to-side wave. Vertically cut records have to contend with the problem of gravity because the extra time that the needle takes to fall in each trough will slightly distort the sound of the wave etched into the record. This is also why stereo records aren't exactly split into an up-down wave and side-to-side wave, as I said in the video, because that would mean that one of the tracks would be much clearer than the other. So instead, both tracks are actually cut at a 45-degree angle on either side of the groove. Also, and I can't believe I got this wrong, I said that Smokey doesn't show up in Smokey and the Bandit Part 3, but he does. It's Bandit who doesn't show up. And, geez, what else? We mistranslated the Spanish sign, misspelled Wisconsin, pilot and receiver. We used the wrong JISC logo here. This is called a U2 Dragon Lady. I said Mauritian instead of Mauritanian. This number should be 100,000. This is the town hall of Bethel, Connecticut, not Bethel, Alaska. This is an HVAC tower, not an HVDC tower. This map of Mumbai Suburban Railway has too many lines. This map of the Northeast Corridor has too many lines. This map of the Soviet Union doesn't make any sense. And this map shows US nuclear missile silos in Vancouver for some reason. That's probably not every single one, but it's at least every one I can verify. Can I please go to heaven now?
Ugh, and you call yourself educational?
Semi-educational. Ah! Alright, well, if you're wondering what's behind those gates, it might be hard for a mortal to imagine, but up here there is a viable, exciting, and grassroots alternative to the platform you're currently watching this video on. It's our sponsor, Nebula. Nebula is a creator-owned streaming service, and it was started by myself and some other great creators because we needed a platform where we could develop and share bigger-budget experimental projects without worrying about advertisers or an algorithm. It was the incubator for our other channel, Jetlag the Game, and the home of our craziest show yet, The Getaway, where we tricked 6 other creators into believing that they were the one saboteur on a road trip social deduction game across the United States. And that's just me. There is an amazing and ever-growing roster of creators who are using Nebula to platform their big projects. It's home to Philosophy Tube's Off West End Play, Real Life Lore series on modern conflicts, City Beautiful series on the world's greatest cities, and so many more. Signing up for Nebula not only gets you access to this massive library of content, but it's also a great way to support independent creators like myself and all these other folks scrolling by. All you need to do is go to nebula.tv/HAI and you'll even get 40% off an annual plan.